This is not pizza. This is tomato soup in a bread bowl.
We learned that Jon Stewart is returning to The Daily Show. He is going to be coming back as a Monday host and executive producer whose creative vision will help to shape the show. One of the things that made Jon Stewart quit the show was how grueling it is. Patrick Klepek, we barely do this show once a week, and that's exhausting. So imagine doing it 4 times a week and needing to put all the creativity into it. I can't. It's just like a lot, and that's why when he moved to Apple TV Plus with his show, The Problem with Jon Stewart, he went to like a once a week schedule. Now that show ended reportedly because of creative and editorial differences. It seemed like what was reported was that Apple wanted to have some editorial voice over the content covered by the show. And if Jon Stewart wants to discuss things like AI and manufacturing in China, he's got to clear it by Apple because those are really important to Apple. And wouldn't you know it, Apple, like when they hire someone like Jon Stewart, he's going to want to investigate things in the world that are interesting that might impact Apple. And I guess they didn't see that coming. So anyway, he left that show. And at the same time as that's happening, The Daily Show's Trevor Noah left as the host. And also the heir apparent, Hassan Minhaj, was involved in a controversy over a New Yorker piece that accused him of fabricating many of the stories behind his one-man shows. So there's an opening for a new / old host of The Daily Show. In comes Jon Stewart back in the chair for one night a week. Also, reportedly, Paramount Plus in the process of putting itself up for sale. Or sorry, not Paramount Plus, Paramount as a whole. In the process of putting itself up for sale and potentially having like a really well-respected comedian with a long history like Jon Stewart maybe makes the company more attractive. Paramount, along with many other studios, need wins right now. So the circumstances were right. The perfect storm happened where like all these stars aligned. Jon Stewart left, new host didn't work out, Paramount putting itself up for, all these things aligned. And now Jon Stewart's back in the host chair in time for a very consequential election. Patrick Klepek, I'm curious, what was your first reaction hearing about this?
I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit. Seems a bit of a desperate move to head back to The Daily Show. I mean, Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert defined, like, they were such mainstays of how I spent my evenings in high school, in college, for better or worse, defined a lot of how I thought about and engaged with politics in that era of my life, in like late high school, early college, before I feel like I sort of rounded out into the more the more thoughtful person that I am today, which is normal. Like, you kind of latch on to these characters, to these people that help you make sense of the world. And I think that was the appeal of Stewart, especially post 9/11, for a lot of disillusioned youth that sort of didn't understand what was going on, why it was going on. And Jon Stewart was this really effective, very funny way of kind of coping with the world. But I think ultimately, looking back on that era, like, Stewart was a great time waster, but he didn't. I think he likes to think that he was part of like defining a political movement. But I think mostly what Stewart like encapsulates is a way of feeling good about yourself for a moment, and then you turn off the show and like nothing of the world actually changes. And I think it's part of the reason I always found myself more drawn to Colbert, like the Colbert Report, when that spun off out of The Daily Show, because I found that, and there are plenty of problems you can have with Colbert as well, but that show was just much sharper, much more pointed, much more activist, really, like trying to like build I remember like the whole arc of Colbert building a super PAC. Like,
that was incredible.
I thought it was incredible reporting, using comedy to enlighten something about how the system is broken, as opposed to Stewart, who I thought was a little like yelling at clouds as time went on.
Mhm. Yeah. First of all, I'm really glad you said all that because I feel exactly the same way, and I was worried we were gonna have to argue about this. I think there is this. Okay, let me table set.
Mhm.
I'm in the same boat as you. Jon Stewart was essential viewing for me in college. Like, I have spent, I'm gonna say conservatively, thousands of hours watching Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, like watching the Daily Show, watching the Colbert
Back to
Report, like
back, right? Because they would
back to
air
back.
back to back. So
Yeah,
my DVR would record it, or I would time my dinner to it, and it's like that's what I did Monday through Thursday, or caught up on them late. Like I did not miss a single episode for the years that I was wrapped up in it.
I remember distinctly like torrenting episodes of the Daily Show and like putting them on my iPad 2 and like watching those at the
Yes.
airport. Like
Yes.
I was like obsessed with the Daily Show and like all the talent that came up there. So I've spent many hours watching Jon Stewart. I think he's enormously talented, and I think there's many things that his show did well. And in particular, Jon Stewart's show really came into its own during the George W. Bush era, like, and exposing a lot of the corruption and the lies. Not exposing, but like sort of putting a humorous slant on a lot of the
Hypocrisy. Like a
the
lot of
hypocrisy,
Stewart. Yeah.
the complete just incompetence of that era of government. And you know, I thought he did a marvelous job at it. I think there's the tendency of a lot of people such as myself to look back on Jon Stewart as this kind of leftist who was speaking truth to power. And that is not an accurate view of him, in my opinion. You know, I think he was kind of left of center. And the biggest target he had, first of all, you said that he saw himself as this uh, leader of this movement. I actually don't think so. I think he shirked his responsibility at every step of the way.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
At very many points, people will be like, "You're the voice of a generation, Jon Stewart," and he's like, "My show comes on the air after puppets making crank calls." He would often like downplay the significance.
I'm a comedian, not a politician.
I'm a comedian, not a politician, not a journalist, and that gave him this very convenient perch from which he could like snipe at all these people. And it was very enjoyable, the sniping. Like we got a lot out of it. We got a lot of great entertainment out of it. But I think you're right that to say it made any difference is probably deceiving yourself. Now, later on, Jon Stewart did do activist things. He did the 9/11, testimony that he gave and trying to get funding for first responders and so on. Like that did make a difference and should be admired. And I'm not questioning that at all. I'm purely talking about the majority of his time at the Daily Show and kind of that work. There was also the rally to restore fear and or sanity. I don't know if you remember that.
Dude, I think that's when the illusion broke.
Exactly.
For a lot of people was this very. You should probably set it up because I think like it sounds wild in retrospective. Like
it's wild. I actually have a clip from it that I can play.
Please.
But the idea is that like he was like, let's have a rally, and the idea is that I think he was sick and tired of what he saw as extremism on both sides of the political spectrum on television, right? In the media.
Well, his whole thing was hypocrisy, right? Like that was like if there was a cornerstone of what the Daily Show specifically was pointing out was, well, if we just show them how hypocritical they're being, their behavior will change. And so then when the Daily Show ends at the beginning of the Trump era, in which we get a president in which shame is not a stick, like hypocrisy is actually part of the appeal as opposed to a character flaw. I think in many ways, like that, when you look back on that era, when I look back on that era, like how I reacted to it, you feel a sense of like, well, the hypocrisy meant nothing. It's funny to laugh at. Empty calories they feel good for a reason. They're empty calories, but they still leave you feeling empty on the other side of it.
Yeah, I don't know that that's how I characterize the rally. Like, I think it was really like, hey, there's the media is too extreme. That's really what the thing of the rally was, and we the silent majority are people who are not that extreme, and we are tired of the media.
The
Yeah,
center.
the center, as it were, right. The media hasn't caused our problems, but it's made them worse by making everything so extreme. And the extremism of the media is really one of the biggest problems facing America these days. Hey, I think Jon Stewart pieced out before Donald Trump became president. Like he left like around that time.
I
Retired.
believe he ends in the spring during the primaries. I remember watching clips of Trump coming down the escalator, like that very infamous moment, and him commenting on it. So I think it was right in that period leading up to him getting the nomination that Stewart retires from the position.
Spoiler alert. I don't think that the extremism in media was one of our biggest problems. I mean, it is a problem. I'm not going to say that there's no issues with the media, but I don't think that was like the existential threat facing us at that time. And I think history has proven him really wrong on that front.
His theory of the case of what was the problem with politics was incorrect, and I think has only grown to be. I think in some ways it feels like slightly unfair because like he was wrong, but it's just he was so wrong. Like the years the moment he puts a period on his time with the Daily Show, it's as though history went, well, time to turn to the next page, which is, Jon Stewart was wrong about everything. And that's hyperbolic, but I think the moment we entered into immediately like pointed out like where he was pointing his finger was not where the problems of America.
Yeah, where we should have been focusing most of our attention.
Our ire, who we consider evil, who's considered the problem, was not necessarily polarized media shows. It's funny. Look, I'll rewatch that Tucker Carlson, Jon Stewart Crossfire clip. It's brilliant. Like I love like stuff like that is what made me fall for him in the first place. But even that clip itself is at the heart of Stewart's whole mission. His point during that era was, well, I'll just show you how stupid you sound, and then like the public will just make an informed decision. I regret to inform you that's not how things played out, and you've got to be a little more forceful with how you enact change.
I do think the media is a problem. There are many problems with the media, and in specifically like the right wing media that's enabled someone like Donald Trump to rise to power. Like it's not like there's nothing there, but it's best summed up by Jon Stewart himself, who gave an interview to Kara Swisher a few years ago when the problem with Jon Stewart was launching, and he said, "quote Almost everything that I believed and advocated for didn't come to pass and probably got worse." End quote. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's his own assessment. It's not just me. That is his own assessment of the case. So I am really curious about whether or not his return to the Daily Show is going to yield different fruit. Now, I think that when it came to the problem with Jon Stewart, like there's a TV show called The Problem with Jon Stewart, that he learned from a lot of the stuff he did wrong in the Daily Show. He had a more diverse writers' room. He tried to make his politics more pointed. I think the show was not as good as the Daily Show, not as fun and freewheeling. But I could tell this is somebody who's still like in the process of growing. But he now re-enters the world of late night in a very different environment. Comedy Central is a shell of its former self. Like, I remember back in the day, it was producing original programming and helping to like launch tons of comics careers. And it's still doing a little bit of that, but like not nearly, the world where there's like a broad city coming out of comedy is over. That's not happening anymore, right?
It's just a channel on your cable package at this point. And really it's like the Daily Show. I mean, that's
the primary like live action thing that they do, that's anyway, one of the most probably one of their biggest drivers of traffic. Also, we enter a very different political world and a very different media environment where, people aren't, you and I probably watch a lot fewer half-hour shows on TV than we did when the Daily Show was in its heyday. And so can this succeed? I don't know. I'm very skeptical. I'm similarly skeptical as you are, Patrick Klepek. But I still think Jon Stewart's pretty smart. I still think he is pretty good at what he does. And
I think I've changed, right? Like that's I think like the most fundamental shift here is that I, as a political actor, my political beliefs, where I fall on the political spectrum and where I spend my time has changed, where like I don't need him. Like he's not a guiding light for me and how I view the world anymore. And so I could totally see myself still tuning in and consuming the empty calories and laughing at the clips and the setups. And he's got great delivery. Like, but it's like, well, I don't need you anymore. Like, so I can still watch this. I can enjoy it. It's one show a week. But when it comes to how do I define how I look at the world, I think it's funny. I can actually point to, I think, a similar arc you and I have probably gone on, which is one of your favorite films of the year, a movie I still haven't seen. I'm upset about it, which is How to Blow Up a Pipeline was one of your favorite films of this year. And I think that movie, its existence, its power, the fact that it's one of your favorite films of the year, I think in many ways might represent our own political shifts over like the last 20 years from like watching that in our teens and early 20s to where we arrive now. And so what does he mean to a younger generation? Or is this just, I frankly think this is millennial nostalgia bait. And he's going to get a big payday and it still might be kind of fun to watch, but does Jon Stewart have power anymore? No, but also it doesn't matter. Like there are different power players in the world. I think more people are going to watch, what's his face on Twitch? It's Hassan, right? I think that's where the stewards of the world have shifted, is into places like Twitch and YouTube. And it's not the Daily Show anymore.
The Daily Show's audience in the time since Jon Stewart's been on the air has shrunk by 75%. It's gone from 2.2 million viewers a night to 570,000. And the median age of the Daily Show has gone from 48.2 years to 63.3 years. So I don't know if it'll be relevant at all for the younger generation, but it might be relevant for people like us and older, Patrick Klepek.
Great.
Yeah. The most prized demographic amongst advertisers. So anyway, Jon Stewart coming back to the Daily Show. It's fair to say that Patrick Klepek and I both have a lot of mixed thoughts about it, but it's somebody who we've spent hundreds of hours watching. And so
I'm going to check it out. My curiosity is going to get the better of me, and I will at least be checking in to see what his own arc is, right? Like from the Daily Show to the problem with Jon Stewart to this. Is it just putting the same glove back on, or does he have a different take? That I'll be curious just to see what his approach is like.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.